This is Truth is Scarier Than Fiction, and welcome to my 100 subscriber special, 50 True Scary Stories. Number 1. Alright, here goes. I have a dad that lives in the middle of the Ozark Mountains, and I stay with him for a few weeks to a month every summer. My mom has custody, but she and my dad are still on good terms. The house isn't great, but he made a lot of furniture out of local cedar, and he's a pretty skilled carpenter and engineer type. He has his own sawmill and workshop that my brother was with me, used to make candlesticks and tables and things when we got older. The house had this little screen wall porch, important later, on the side 90 degrees away from the door. It has a sliding door, but it's busted, so you have to walk about 20 feet around the house each time you want to go in or out. Anyways, I was about 11 or 12. There were only a few days left until I went back home to my mom's house, and I was excited so I could play video games. It's nighttime. Me and my brother's bedroom are on the second floor. Only window has a good view of the front yard. Read. Trees to left and right, driveway and road to front. I'm trying to fall asleep, but I'm too excited. I hear my dad and stepmom talking downstairs, which is weird because they're always asleep by 10ish. Then I hear the front door opening. This is weird. I look out the window and see my dad walk out with a flashlight and his old double barrel. I don't know the model. He goes to the leftmost tree line and shines light here and there. I debate waking up my brother about this, but he gets angry real easy, so I decide against it. I hear a gunshot, and I whip back to my window. Look back in time to see my dad thumb another shell into the breech. Whatever he was doing, he wanted 2 shots at the ready. I was so nervous I actually heard the clack of the gun. I see him walk backwards all the way to the house, trying to hold his gun and the flashlight up at the same time. It was one of those big clunking ones that had the massive battery. He makes it uneventfully. I'm too worried to fall back asleep. For the next few days he seems weird and more quiet than usual. He doesn't want to do any of the stuff he normally leaps at with us. We left a few days later, and I was too scared to ask him about it. The next year we visited, though, things were different around the house. I drive up to his house. Rode there with a half-grown English Mastiff taking up 80% of the back seat. Friendly enough to us, but slobbery. We finally make it around late afternoon. Suddenly, lights everywhere. There are floodlights at each corner of the house, lights on posts, Christmas lights strung up around the outside. Honest to God, watchtowers set up at 3 sides of the house. The sawmill's been moved. New platform on top of the workshop. He's got 4 or 5 new guns, all high-powered rifles. There was even a concrete bunker. I kid you not, my dad's place is still set up like this. It was in the days before camera phones, and it never occurred to me to take pictures of his shame until now. Ask him what it's all for. He says the platforms are for deer stands. He says the bunker is for auto maintenance. The lights are to make the place look more cheery. The dogs and the guns are to keep weirdos off the property. The way he answered my questions still bugs me. They sounded 100% rehearsed. Go to bed that night. There's a new heavy curtain on the window. Why? Because the lights are always on. I'll wake up that night to a gunshot and I look outside. I see my dad in one of the deer stands working the bolt on one of his new guns. Something's up. The next morning he's practically vegetative. I ask him about last night. Trying to get us a deer to barbecue. I shrug it off. I ask if I can go outside to play. He thinks for a moment and eventually says yes, but he warns me not to go off into the woods. He had super intense eyes when he said that last thing, despite being raccoon-eyed. I go outside and make a beeline for the stand he was on last night. My feet clink on a pile of 30 shells. If you've been doing all this math, all the new gear plus those expensive rounds should be adding up to quite a sum. His job's not terrible, but that must have been expensive. Fast forward a few days later, and my dad's got a pig from one of his neighbors. Closest one is at least 5 miles in any direction, and we spend the next few days learning how to barbecue properly. My dad has the shoddy on his standby, and Fonzie, his old German shepherd, nearby the entire time. That evening, we're all sitting on the screen porch licking our fingers when Fonzie starts barking his head off, staring at the ravine behind the house. Dogs on the other side start barking and growling too. My dad stands up and nearly knocks a plate off his lap. He grabs the gun and stares down the ravine. "Kate," which was my stepmom, "take the boys inside," he said. Suddenly, I hear sounds of branches snapping from trees near the bunker. My brother and I are swapping each other nervous glances. Without a word, Dad hands Kate Fonzie's leash and takes the rear while she goes inside. Once inside the greenhouse, it's a straight shot to the door and the 6 of us go in. My dad grabs a flashlight, a new gun, and a bug-out bag filled with rounds and goes outside with Fonzie. Kat tries to keep us entertained with a stash of old kids' tapes, but neither of us are interested. My brother wants to go outside and help Dad. I'm pretty angry. For about half an hour, it's nothing but gunshots, growling, and the occasional yell from Dad. The window-mounted AC is running, and there's a weird smell to the air. Old barbecue, gun smoke, and something absolutely awful. Not trying to copy Opie, but that's almost exactly how he put it. Rank horse sweat mixed with something like old manure and hot death and stale urine. Kat decides to risk it and opens the door to see what's going on. When she does, the house is immediately flooded with the stench. She shouts out to him. He barks back, "Keep that door closed!" She keeps that closed. Eventually, bodily needs overcome fear, and I walk off to the bathroom. It's set on the wall that faces the ravine. The next bit's gonna sound seriously fake, but it's the reason I keep all my windows covered to this day. As I'm going to the bathroom, I look up at the bathroom mirror. Something in the reflection looks back at me. It's illuminated by the light from inside and outside, so I get a better look at it than I would have ever thought I wanted to. It's a bullet-shaped head, but not in the traditional sense. Stand a 9mm round on its base, and you got an idea. Rough, gray-red fur with forward-facing whorl. That little swirly thing on the back of your neck, and what looks like a part on one side. Eyes? The eyes are the absolute worst. Its face is sort of lopsided, but the nose is large and squashed, the mouth is hanging open a little, and the teeth are some sort of tombstone-shaped and cruddy. I just sit and stare at the thing's reflection, my mind failing to change gears. Then it leans forward, and I hear the clunk of its face hitting the glass above my head. The new source of input recalibrates my brain. It realizes that the thing is right behind me. I start wailing like a banshee, and I hear the thing gurgle through the glass. I flail sprint my way through the bathroom door, trip on my pants, and get a chunk of wood from the kitchen's particle board floor lodged in my knee. I'm too scared to feel pain or embarrassment. Kat and my brother come in the kitchen and see me panting and sobbing, sprawled on the floor, pants around my feet, staring at the bathroom. I didn't even have time to wipe. Kat asks what happens as I pull my pants up. My dad comes barging through the door. Guess he heard my screams and thought I was being attacked by some big, gurgling monkey dog. He sees me on the floor bleeding and immediately starts yelling about how I raised that much of a racket over a busted knee. I see his fear, relief, and anger, and raise him the hurt and pure terror of a tween that lost a staring contest with a monster. I tell him about the thing I saw. He tells me and my brother to go upstairs. I don't remember much after that, except that he went back out, left one of the other dogs with us, and that cat helped clean and bandage my knee. The next day, Dad wouldn't let us go outside, but the smell was still in the house. He called our mom up to come to Springfield, which was our halfway meeting point the next day. The pig was gone, and there were about 80 pounds of exclusively barbecued leftovers and carcass that Dad had promised the neighbor in exchange for the pig. One of the dogs was missing. Dad stayed inside with us that night. I was too afraid to go downstairs to the bathroom, so he gave me a milk bottle and an extra blanket as a privacy tent. And that's really it. He took us to Springfield the next day and made us promise not to tell Mom. I might not have shown it very well, but he loved the hell out of us and didn't want her to stop bringing us. I was there again a year ago or so. We barbecued in his new, hand-built smokehouse, drank, and basically shot the breeze. But the second I brought up that incident, it killed the mood immediately. All he said was, "We haven't been having any trouble for the last few," and went back drinking immediately. It's worth mentioning, though, that there's a new addition to his place. A concrete slab off past the trees in the back of the house. It's not raised off the ground at all, and it's not very cleanly laid out. It's about 5 feet wide, 6 or 7 feet long, and if you kick up the dirt around it, you'll bring up a thin layer of black stuff, like soot. Now, I'm not saying that he managed to kill one of these things, burned its corpse in a pit, and buried it all under concrete. But if he did, I hope it was that big gurgly bastard. Number 2. I used to go hiking through my massive expanse of woods when I was around 14 or 15. Usually I went alone, however this time I brought a friend with me. I always carried my dad's .38 revolver for coyotes. As we were walking through the woods, my buddy was carrying an LED lantern. It had started to go out. Besides it, we only had a few flashlights. Eventually it died, so we started to use our flashlights and decided to start walking back home. We turn around and walk about 200 feet into the woods. Then, we start to hear a grown man talking to us. We freak out and turn around, and at that moment I remembered I have my .38 tucked in my waistband. We both look at the sky. I pull out the revolver and hold it to my side. It's like he doesn't even notice. He was an obese, huge man, like perhaps 6'8". He just says, "What? What? What?" I tell him that this is our property and that we are allowed to shoot him. It wasn't, but it was hard to tell in the woods. Whatever. He just looks at us and smiles, almost nervously. It's really unsettling. He looks as if he's about to step towards us, so I thumb the hammer of the revolver and level it at his face. "Whatever, man." He turned tail and ran off. He didn't even appear to have a flashlight or anything. Me and my friend sprinted home and told my dad what happened. We're not allowed to explore the woods anymore, and the cops were called to look for the guy. Nothing ever turned up after a few days of scanning the woods. This place is weird. Might have just been a crazy redneck or maybe a meth addict. The foliage is so thick we might have been near someone's trailer, but it was basically pitch black, so we could never tell. Number 3. So I have to share the story that is beyond me. It isn't very long, but it is creepy as hell. I've been jogging recently to get ready for the military, but I found out that running at later hours is a pain, so I've been running at about 4 to 5 in the morning. Anyhow, it was around 4:30. I was running about 30 minutes now, and I was kinda getting tired. I've reached a fork in the road. It takes two directions. One goes behind this elementary school. The other goes to the side of the school. About 400 feet away on this trail that goes behind the school, an old lady is pulling her dog from behind her. You know that pull you do in a dog when it starts falling behind the leash. Tug, tug, tug. She's not aware of me. I decide to take the trail behind the school to avoid a confrontation. I run about 200 feet to these pull-up bars on the playground. Usually about this time I do light stretches and a minor workout in the park, as no one is around. I remember putting my hands on my hips, looking up at the sky and exhaling. "Hello, sweetie." I near jump out of my skin and turn around. The woman is walking her dog 20 feet behind me. Keep in mind that this was about 20 seconds, which is far too little time for her to walk all the way over. Hello? The woman kinda stares at me with this creepy smile. I glance down and realize that her dog is laying on the ground sideways, tongue hanging out. It doesn't take me long to realize that this dog is beyond dead. Road rash is on the entire left side of the dog. I glance back at the woman, letting my uncomfortable demeanor show. Her smile widens. "Would you mind walking an old lady to her house?" she says as her smile continues to eerily widen. Every muscle in my body screamed no, so I said, "No, sorry I'm late for something," and turn around. About mid-turn, the old woman snaps her arm and grips, not just grab, my shoulders and says, "You usually sit out here for a while. I've seen you exercise out here." I pull my shoulder down and start running in the opposite direction of her. I reach about the end of the park and turn around. No woman in sight, but my hand is death gripping my pepper spray. About 10 feet from where we were standing, the dog, attached to a leash, stretched out, pointed toward the bushes. I pull my phone out and call 911. I basically tell some operator some old lady was dragging her dead dog around and leave out her inhuman speed. The operator sounds unamused but reluctantly sends down an officer. I constantly stare at the bushes for what seems like hours, but is more like around 8 minutes. The officer pulls up, no lights on, and calls me over. Immediately when I turn around, something runs from the bushes. The officer sees it too, and he's not entirely startled at first. I turn around, raising my pepper spray toward the sound. The officer slowly steps out of the car, obviously confused. Probably just a nest of rabbits. When did rabbits get that big? The officer seems really pissed, but I understand. I seem crazy at this point. He steps away from the car and has me follow him to where I saw the dog. Kinda expected the dog to be gone, but the dog was still there. It was a small fluffy dog with a shitty nose, Pomeranian I think. The officer kinda looks at it, arms crossed, and looks at me. He glares at me and asks where the woman is. She ran off into the bushes when I called the police. He kinda glares at me and says, "Wait here," and walks over the bushes. He says something into his radio, looks back at me and stands there. 5 minutes later, another cruiser pulls up with 2 officers inside. One walks to the other officer, and the other one walks to me. The officer starts questioning me, while the other 2 go into the bushes. I keep glancing over, expecting them to come out with the old lady. "Something seems to be a problem?" The officer seems annoyed and closes the book and says, I'm gonna be level with you. This is awfully suspicious. What's going on? I basically tell him everything about how creepy it was, and he just silently nods the entire time. The other two officers appear, holding what appears to be torn pieces of the clothing the old woman was wearing. The original responding officer asks if I recognize the articles. I tell him it's the old woman's clothing. At this time I feel stupid as they kinda stare at me before the responding officer says, "Did you kill this dog?" I start to get nervous and defensively telling them no and repeating the parts I left out and how insane it sounded. The officer kind of nods and walks me to his car and waves to the other police officers. He starts talking to me about how weird this looks for me, and they'll probably investigate it further. He drives me home, and just as I'm about to get out, he stops me and says, "I suggest taking a different route. Don't piss off anything you or I don't understand." He then does this nice wave and smile, and I get the feeling he knew I wasn't being overdramatic on the subject. I still haven't gone running and haven't heard anything from that morning. That was 4 days ago. Number 4. It was around 5 a.m. and I was jogging in a nearby park. I usually jog about 2.5 kilometers a day, so it's pretty hard as I am overweight. I make it to this alley and someone rides in front of me on a bike. I look up at them and it's someone I know. I said, "Hey." No response at all, and they keep riding. I eventually get home and text them, "Were you riding your bike at 5 a.m.? She says, "No, that'd be stupid." The person I saw looked identical to them, even was wearing the same clothes I'd last seen them in. Another jogging experience at that same alley. I was jogging across the same field, and I came across this man and woman. Both were dressed in a gray shirt and gray pants, and I recall that the man was saying something to the woman. I'm not sure what it was. Later on in that jog, I made it to the same alley. I saw those two people walking down the alley. Normally, I walk down it. I had a gut feeling to go somewhere else. Number 5. I was home taking a shower at about 11 o'clock at night. While I'm in the shower, everything is fine. That is until I start washing my hair, and I hear my front door slam open and stomping going up the stairs. I washed the rest of the stuff out of my hair. I grab my firearm and load it, and I walk out to see that my front door is wide open. I recall locking it. I'm afraid to go back upstairs. Eventually, however, I overcome my fear, and I go upstairs and clear the whole house. I hear scratching at the door. It was my cat. In my house, we have a Samsung smart thing so we can see whenever our doors are open and when they close and when they unlock, etc. I close the door and realize that I can look at it. Notice that it didn't show the door opening the first time. It's not sketchy at all. I go to open the door again because why not? I hear the black door slam louder than anything before. I run up to my room and lock it. I sleep with the lights on and next to my gun. To this day, I still have no explanation for what happened. Number 6. When I was 9 years old, I was going to get a glass of water, and I heard footsteps in the living room while I was in the kitchen. I stick my head out to see an empty living room. Over the next few years, strange things occurred. The attic door would open by itself even if locked. Things would go missing or be moved without explanation. A few years pass and I am now a teenager, and I'm helping to remodel my childhood home. While I was in the attic, I find a door above the living room. That's strange, I think to myself. In the room behind the door, I find a small mattress with food boxes strewn around. everything is covered in layers of dust. Eventually, I would realize that someone was living in my attic, and I didn't find out until long after they'd moved out. Number 7. This one's not really a story, more like a series of things that, when looked back on, freak me out. My grandma used to own an old home in the middle of orange fields on the outskirts of Wood Lake at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The house was built like in the early 19th century, and it belonged to a doctor who would perform surgeries in the house. I never lived in the house myself, but my mom did when she was growing up. During that time, her sisters claimed to have come into contact with a little leprechaun creature. One story goes that my oldest sister, who shared a room with my mom, woke my mama during the middle of the night shaking and pointing. She said, "Can't you see it? It's sitting right there in the chair." Apparently, the little leprechaun thing was sitting in the chair watching them sleep. My aunt claimed it was well dressed, but she knew it was evil. According to my other aunt who grew up there, that side of my family is Spanish, and there's a lot of us from that side. She was cooking in the creepy kitchen when she felt uneasy. She claimed to be looked at by a little, well-dressed midget. But that's the thing. My mom claims that she couldn't see it, even if one of my aunts was pointing it out. There's this Mexican lore of a leprechaun-like creature called the Duende. The thing is, my sister has always been a bit strange to us. She's distant, and she's never been really focused. She's very malnourished, and she may suffer from a mild form of anorexia. But the other aunt who claimed she saw it in the living room was very talkative, and she needs evidence and facts in order to even consider believing something. She's not superstitious in any way, so for her to come up with a similar story is a bit unnerving. I'll type up some more incidents right now. Eventually, the house burned down, and that's the creepiest story of them all. In addition to these 2 claimed sightings of a duende, my grandma herself claims to have seen the thing lurking in the orange field. She has this really, really creepy statue of the Virgin Mary that she would pray to every night to keep the thing away. My family was raised traditional Catholic. The weird aunt claims to have come into some sort of contact with it a second time, and that's the last of the duende we've heard of. But getting back to the stories of the house, my grandma was always very kind to me. She spoiled me rotten and would always tend to me and show me affection. However, she had a rule to never go in the attic. The attic had its own separate, weird, closet-like room in order to access it. You would open the door, and a closet the size of a human held a pull-down ladder that would take us to the attic. One day, I got curious, and I attempted to go up it, just for a peek. My grandma appeared out of nowhere from behind me, and she was furious. That was the only time she hit me. Of my uncles and aunts who snuck up into the attic. According to them, it's extremely dark up there, but there is a skylight. The skylight is directly above the lifted stage area of the attic. Now that I think back on it, this is probably where the doctor who owned the house previously would operate on people. I can only imagine how the moonlight shone on a stage during a full moon. Even though it was dark, my uncle and aunt's eyes adjusted, and they could make out little tables and other furnishings up there. However, there was a wall that was darker than all the others. They all got an uneasy vibe, and hightailed it out of there. Another incident, I was playing with my cousins when I was younger in this weird connecting room that linked the kitchen to the laundry room, bathroom, and toy room. My cousin fell or something and a plank became loose. We lifted it and found a velvet black box. Inside there was a handkerchief. We took it and showed it to our grandpa, and for some reason he flipped out, grabbed it, and tossed it into the fireplace. In general, when I would visit that house as a kid, I could not stay in a room by myself. As soon as I was alone, I just felt like I had to get out of there. This was before any of these stories were told to me, but this might have been simply from me being a little kid and my imagination running wild at the time. Even though the house terrified me, I always wanted to visit, and I had a ridiculously fun time when I would spend time with my cousins and family. But if they would all leave the living room, I would leave too. I just couldn't be alone in a room. Number 8. This story is from a guy who claims to be a former Habbo moderator, which was a hotel game for kids. We're sitting in a meeting, discussing the likelihood of being able to save Habbo.jp from its inevitable demise. Boring meeting rolls on, and we talk about the possibilities of branching out into Turkey, or perhaps merging hotels into each other to create mega hotels. Blah blah, you know how it is. On the way out of the meeting, a member of my moderation team pulls me into the office over to where he was sitting and hushes me, starts collecting his things up, nods towards our manager at the front of the room who is on the phone and mumbles, "Listen to me." I oblige and hear my manager say something along the lines of this: "Look, blank, I'm not sure this shutdown is a great idea. I mean, look what happened to .ie. That was an absolute disaster, and the community only consisted of about 10 users, and that was nearly a decade ago. We've moved on since then." .ie? What is that? I was thinking. A friend mumbles, "Come on" to me, and asks me, "You hear that? .ie. What do you think that is?" Quick note. This coworker was a noisy bugger who used to be a major Habbo nerd in his downtime. He was well known in the community for being dedicated to his role and had an unhealthy interest in the game that bordered on the obsessive. I don't know, man. What does it matter? Come on, dude. Let's find out. I'm asking one of the techs. Come on, then. Just to keep it quiet. We go to the part of the building where our code monkeys live, look around a little, and find the guy we're looking for. I'll refer to him as G, and my nerd of a coworker as F from here now on. G says, "IE, you mean Habbo Ireland?" "Habbo what?" "Habbo Ireland. It closed down in April 2001 when it became obvious it wasn't going to be needed alongside Habbo UK. Barely had any users." "Huh, that's neat." F replied, "Oh my god, got any screenshots of it?" G said that he'd dig around in his archives and see if anything showed up. "Don't get your hopes up though, that thing is long gone. Come see me tomorrow morning." The next day, F is going nuts like a hyperactive child when I get to the office. F, "G has it, he has IE, he actually has it. He's got some screenshots?" No, he found the old database, Furna data, everything, the whole hotel was backed up in the archives. He's got it running." This piqued my interest. I went there, and G is sitting there, looking smug. Look what I got. "It's pretty cool, man," I say as I see the empty rooms he's stood in with his little avatar. Only 300 or so registered users. Only ones active when the hotel were closed were these 6. Do they have any rooms? Never thought to check. I'll look. The hotel room's IDs went up to only about 1,200 or so, which, for its size, wasn't too bad. This is where it gets weird, though. G enters the room of the first user, which was called Daniel or Danny. Scripted room, nothing odd, death to the south wrote in sticky notes in the back of the room. Next room belonged to the user N, which was something called a Jolly Roger pub. Normal little bar room, common sort of thing for the time. Few sticky notes and friends. Again, cool. View N's mission in game. Death to the south. 2 in a row. Weird. We suggest that the bulk of the players must have been Northern Islanders, which would explain their immense hatred for the south. Next room, usually this time was something I don't remember. Room is called UK. The floor has a pig's face made out of peerage hairs on the floor again, scripted stickies and skeleton posters. F the Brits in the back of the room. The heck is this all about? We keep going through the rooms belonging to the last 6 on the hotel. All of them have a strictly anti-UK theme on them, barring a few. One sticky note lists 15 or so names with the title as "The Final Few" on it. G just looks a little bit saddened by what he's found, and breaks the silence we have between us all. Well, that was depressing. What the hell? F said that they didn't seem happy about being closed while the UK remained open. We shut it all down and went back to work. 2 weeks later, G, F, and myself are pulled into the office. We get told by a higher-up to never access that IE again, and we are told the reasoning for keeping it quiet internally is because some kid named Daniel Matthews offed himself when they shut the hotel down, and they didn't want the word to become widespread for fear of the controversy it would cause. Instantly when he says this, I get a feeling on the bottom of my stomach. Daniel Matthews is the username of the first room we entered. Number 9. Another story from the same user. Going to work like any other day. Coffee on the desk, life is good, and I thank my coworker Amanda for having the coffee ready for me. There's a note on the desk telling me that I'm working on Habbo.jp today as an English community manager to help the Japanese keep on top of the English users who will be on Habbo.jp while Habbo.co.uk is going down for some updates. I go to load client, disconnect. It's gonna be one of these days. I reload client and it disconnects again. Gee, the hotel is down. No dip, I can't get in there either. You're a dev, fix it. It's not that easy, the whole hotel is down. But it shows that there are users online. What? Come here, I'll show you. I just loaded up my normal user, it works fine. It's just that my staff account isn't working. I load the hotel and everything appears to be working normally. The welcome message is changed to S and nothing else. This isn't the first time this has happened. The user called Saxon on JP hacked the housekeeping twice. Did this exact thing, along with posting other inappropriate photos on Habbo Photos using scripting tools. The guy was incredibly shady, and there was an office rumor that he was one of the Japanese staff members who had a messed up sense of humor because of how little we knew about the guy. Great, let's see what he's done this time. The public rooms are gone. All private rooms are gone. Room creation is disabled. Only rooms belong to Saxon, and guess who's back? I enter the room, and Saxon is there as expected, along with a few of his 6 friends. Stickies scripted in the black sink, stuff in moon runes that I couldn't read. Saxon says, "Welcome," my username and G's username. Well, that isn't worrying in the slightest. G, down JP, move everyone over to .es while this blows over. He tries to log into his account on Gate to close the hotel for an update/maintenance break. User does not exist. 6 hours of phone call and another 6 hours of meetings later, we try to get access back, and we succeed. However, JP's entire database is gone, barring Saxon's account cloned about 500,000 times, with numbers after each variation of the name. Thankfully, we backed up our servers, and within a week, .jp was back up and running. We still have no real idea who Saxon is, or how we knew our real names. Number 11. I was about 12 years old at the time, and my dad was a real stoic type, quiet, contemplative, and he didn't talk to strangers much, but he's still a very nice man. We're walking around downtown, getting some chores done, stopping by the hardware store, Dad's renewing his car's registration, stuff like that. As we're walking down the street, suddenly my dad stops and stares into this parked truck. Everyone else around us is still moving. There's an old man with his eyes closed in the driver's seat. There's also a young woman with him, and she's crying, leaned over him. My dad suddenly acts angry and says, "Just shake him. He'll wake up." I stand there, confused and unsure of what's going on. Dad walks sort of in front/diagonal to the truck and has this really hateful look on his face. The woman doesn't say or do anything, but simply stares at us. My dad suddenly turns and walks off. I follow him, but he keeps looking back at the truck. She's still crying as we're walking away, and he's sitting there with his eyes closed, but doesn't really look dead. When we get home, I ask Dad what that was about, and he just rolls his eyes and goes back to what he was doing. I ask him a couple weeks later, and he still doesn't know what I'm talking about. Number 11. I have a buddy in the army, 101st Airborne. We're in Kandahar, circa 2010. Anyway, my battalion is preparing to mount recon expedition into neighboring Arghanabad district. As our unit is about to cross the river, someone in the unit says that he sees an old woman washing bloody fatigues in the river, and would very much like to know why the hell she has them. My buddy, the interpreter, the lieutenant, and a couple others dismount and have a look around. Sure enough, they find an old lady kneeling by the river, washing bloody desert camel and sobbing hysterically. The interpreter says something to her. She looks up, gathers the camel, and darts off behind a hill. They never found her. They head back and have to admit she got away without there being an explanation as to how or where she went. We conduct dismounted recon into Arghanabad. The lieutenant gets blown up by an IED about 3 hours later. A few years after this, I heard a story while I was researching Irish folklore. Turns out there's something called a Morrigan that appears as an old lady washing your blood-stained armor, and if you see her, it's a prediction that you're about to die in battle. Number 12. Never shared this with anyone before. I was about 11 or 13, and I had just moved into a new house in a new city. I take the upstairs bedroom so I can have my own wing of the house. I'm the only one up there. I start staying up late over first summer vacation in the house. Every night around midnight, I hear footsteps pacing up and down the stairs. They never come all the way up to the top, just about halfway up, and then back to the bottom. Light steps with a brisk, rhythmic 2-step per second pace, like walking up, then quickly, but not running or stomping. I also have an old bunk bed that squeaks at the slightest movement. Every time I try to get up to see what it is, the second the bed makes any noise it stops. Doesn't matter where it is on the stairs, in the middle or on the bottom, it just stops. Then I can peek my head out the door. However, I'll find nothing in the stairway. After about a month, I tell my mom about it. She says that it's just the dogs. I know goddamn well that ain't no dog. I start to get bothered, and ask my brothers, whose room are at the bottom of the stairs, if they hear it. They just look at me as if I'm crazy. Once I start telling people about it, everything started changing. It no longer stops halfway up. I should mention, it would keep the same rhythm up and down continuously, not stopping at the bottom to turn around and come back up, just one solid rhythm as long as I would remain silent. As it's going down and back, every time it came up it would come one step higher on the staircase. I would always make noise when it was about 3/4 of the way up so it would stop. For about 6 months it always did. Then it didn't. I had a friend over for a weekend sleepover. Just hanging out in my room upstairs, TV and lights are on and the door is wide open. Around 11:45 I guess I start to get visibly uneasy and my friend asks what's up. I proceed to tell him the story, and he tries to be tough and say that it's scared of you, because whenever you make a noise, it runs away. Out loud, talking toward the door, so if it's there, it can hear him. Midnight comes, no sign of the steps. At 3 in the morning, I'm feeling pretty confident he scared it off. I'm sitting in the middle of the room with Legos when it starts. This time, it's different. It's stomping up and down the steps, and I can see the water in my cup shaking. It starts off coming more than 3/4 the way up and goes down twice as fast. We're staring at each other with our mouths wide open. After it takes another lap, my friend jumps and yells out something to the effect of, "Knock it off!" on its way down. It stops in its tracks about 5 steps from the bottom and starts coming back up slowly, about a second and a half between steps, stomping louder than ever before. My friend is visibly scared. It comes all the way to the top of the steps and pauses a moment. My friend gives out a choked, squeaky, "Please stop." It takes 3 paces from the landing at the top of the steps to my door, just outside, where we would be able to see it. We sit there about 30 seconds in silence. The second I begin to move my arm, the wide open door slams shut so hard the handle broke. The thing runs full sprint down the stairs. My friend and I immediately scream at the top of our lungs and begin crying until my parents came to see what was wrong. Nobody in the house heard the steps, nor did they hear the door slamming. I never heard the steps again after that day, not once. They just stopped cold turkey. The house was brand new. We were the first people to ever live in it, so I have no idea. Number 13. About a year ago, I was lying in bed at 1 o'clock trying to fall asleep. I'm slowly drifting away when I hear a tapping sound. I wake up suddenly and assume that the tapping sound was just in my head. I keep myself wide awake for about a minute just to be sure. Nothing. I slowly drift back asleep again. The tapping sound returns. I wake up, this time a bit nervous, and I wait for about 5 minutes this time. The tapping continues. At this point I realize it's definitely not in my head. The tapping is coming from the window above my bed. I'm on the ground level of the house, but this window is almost 8 feet up in the air. I get up slowly from my bed, and the tapping stops abruptly. I slowly sneak over to my bedroom door and turn toward the window. I open the curtains. There's some lady standing there with her face literally an inch from the glass. I lock eyes with her unintentionally. She's eyeing me like a hawk. The tapping continues, and she gestures for me to open the window. Heck no. I close the curtains, cover my ears, and try to get some sleep, which I didn't. I still hear the tapping every few months or so, no rhyme or reason to it. I've never opened the window, and I always get nightmares every time I hear. Not sure if it's just a hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation. The tapping regardless. Number 14. For some background, I work in a petrol station located on the highway. I work mostly night shifts, so I'm used to the weird, the creepy, and the downright paranormal. But this, it's a normal shift. People are coming and going. Around 7, things are dark, and the store is slowing down a bit. I'm behind the console area when I look to my left and lock eyes with a frail, thin, elderly woman with wrinkled skin and giant fly-eyed sunglasses on that cover half her face. I immediately get the jitters from her. She slowly walks over to the door. I had to manually make it open for her to let her in as the auto doors didn't pick her up. She makes her way to the console. She stares at me, can't tell exactly, as she's still wearing those creepy sunglasses. "Can you come outside and take a look at my car? I think something's wrong." Her voice is soft in volume, but deep and resonating, like I feel it more than I hear it. I decline and explain the company policy, with leaving as only staff on site. "Okay then." She walks off to the toilet. Here is where alarm bells start going off. She walks back out, while I'm tending to a few other customers. "Excuse me, there's no toilet paper. Could you replace it, please?" Something in my head tells me not to go out there, so I just hand her a spare staff toilet paper from behind the console. "Here you go, ma'am." Her demeanor turns sour, or at least as far as I can tell with those sunglasses. She walks back into the toilet. About another 5 minutes later, she walks back out and wanders around the shop. She's scanning me every now and then. She walks to the coffee machine, then calls out to me, "There's no milk in here. Can you replace it? I'd like a coffee." I know I should do it, but every something is up alarm in my body and brain was screaming not to. I decline and say I can't leave the council at this hour of the night. She's visibly annoyed, saying how bad my customer service is. She threatens to contact my manager if I don't come out and change the milk. I decline and apologize, even off manager's number. She tries 3 more times to get me out in the next 20 minutes. Finally, she gives up and walks out, glaring at me through the windows as she rounds the shop out of sight. The rest of the shift goes by without a hitch. No creepy things, surprisingly mellow and normal shift. However, I still have a sense of dread in my stomach. Swap over and leave at 12:30. I'm walking my car about 50 meters in the parking lot. As I get closer, the glasses, scarf, and glove she was wearing around folded neatly, the glasses resting on top in a pile on the ground by my driver's side door. I look around, my sense of dread intensifying. Quick as a flash, I unlock my car, jump in, and lock it again. No time to relax, I start my car and gun it out of there. I've never been so afraid in my life. That sense of dread never left. I got home and needed a few drinks before I could even loosen up enough to consider sleep. Number 15. I was about 14 to 15 years old. I had recently moved into a big house my mom inherited from her great uncle or some other distant relative. The house is around 50 to 60 years old and was built by some distant relative back when what was now my neighborhood was just some dirt roads and vacant lots. It was built in old traditional Portuguese style with tall, square-shaped rooms and big windows. When we moved in, there was a lot of stuff lying around, like old books and furniture, one of those big TV sets from the 1950s, a legitimate Indian bow, and even a hand-drawn portrait of Hitler. But I digress. This went on for a year and a half after we moved in. I would just be lying there, staring at the roof or something. The door was open. I look at it and see the wall of the hallway with pictures hanging from it. Perfectly normal. I look back up at the ceiling. Suddenly and without any reason, I start thinking about some spooky literature I had read that day. Some creepypasta on the internet, or perhaps some Edgar Allan Poe tale. I look at the door again and see a man standing in the doorway. Half of his silhouette is showing, the other half is hidden. He seems to be wearing a black hoodie with the hood over his face and the hands on his pockets. I could see him move back and forth a little. I blinked or moved a little in my bed, and I lost him. Just a yellow hallway staring back at me. At this point, I was legitimately spooked, and I didn't sleep well that night, as you might already be guessing. Eventually, I forgot about the incident. Some 2 months later, also at night, I was reading some book in my bed. Suddenly, I hear a noise in my living room. I go to see what it is, and it's my sister, who was about 10 or maybe 11 at the time, totally desperate, crying and going crazy over some ghost she saw. My parents were obviously concerned about her, but also obviously not buying that she saw a ghost. "Okay, sweetie, just tell us how it was." She tells them that she saw a dude in the hoodie staring at her from the doorway, and when she blinked, he went away. They calm her down. I almost told them that I've seen it too, but I decided against it, as it would have only caused more desperation. I never did tell them and eventually forgot about it. This happened to me for real. Not sure what it was, a ghost, a collective hallucination, my older brother pranking us or whatever. I'm just 100% sure I saw it. I tell this story to one of my roommates like 1 year ago. I had a blunt earlier, and I was still kinda high. He's a Mormon, but he's also kinda into Buddhism and occult and chaos magic and lucid dreaming and ghosts and stuff. Don't ask. My Mormon friend starts telling me all about the astral meaning of what I saw. I'm not really buying into it, but I listen to him because politeness. He then starts talking about some creepy stuff he saw. Really spooky stuff, like when he was on his mission all the way up into Utah. We're Brazilian, by the way. And he and his mate went into a house to talk to a guy about Jesus and whatnot. The guy was really creepy. He gave off a really bad vibe. He wore a hoodie and his house was all dirty, dark, and messy. The typical stuff you see in crappy serial killer movies. He said that at some point he started to see some dark evil things around the door to a specific room, like shadows moving around and devilish things or whatnot, like right out of a creepypasta. I can tell he's not making it up. I start getting the creeps. Sometime later after that, the guy they talked to was arrested. My Mormon friend finds out the dude was a pedo, and he used to make snuff films and the like until the cops tracked him down. The room he made the videos in was the one with the demons and ghosts at the door. I was legitimately spooked by then. Number 16. I'd go home to Bangladesh in the summers when I was younger, and we would stay at the 3rd floor of the apartment building my grandparents owned. One day a servant girl brought some snacks to our floor. No one else was around to answer the door at the time, so I went. I had no idea who she was, nor did I particularly care. I was just confused why some super happy girl brought us snacks because it was about 2 weeks late for a welcome. But my parents knew a lot of people, so I took it without any fuss and left it on the table. My family came back later and my uncle took a piece. But as he took a bite, my mom slapped it out of his hand and suddenly everyone started freaking out. Apparently it was food meant to put a curse on us. Did I mention I live in Bangladesh? Which meant someone had it out for our family. My uncle, who's normally big and dopey, was infuriated about everything for the next 2 days. Obviously that's not evidence of anything, but I was alarmed that my family was so worried about this. My mother had never made any indication of believing in anything like witchcraft before. Even my dad was freaked out. Members of my neighborhood were dispatched to find out who the girl with the snacks was, but I was apparently the only one who had ever seen her. I think one of the cleaning girl servants found something else voodooish in our floor later too, but things that weren't in my normal vocabulary, so I didn't pick up on all the details. Number 17. My uncle has a Bigfoot story. In his late 20s, visiting Bluff Creek with 2 friends, he drove out in a beat-up station wagon. One of them had since college. My uncle had just gotten out of the Navy, graduated university with a computer science degree, got married, had 2 daughters, and became a complete conspiracy nut. They were camping nearby and wanted to hike the area to see if they could recreate the Patterson film. Mostly just turned into them fooling around and getting drunk. That night they were back at their tent and heading to bed when they hear cracking twigs around the site. One of the guys brought a dog, and the dog is half snarling and half cowering. It runs into an open tent the second it has a chance. My uncle heads out with a gun and asks who's out there. His friends are over each of his shoulders, quietly waiting. There's no response. My uncle again asks who's there. Nothing. Finally, he asks one more time and threatens to shoot into the trees. There's a sudden snap as they hear a huge tree branch crack, and then a thud right into the ground. There's a clear silhouette of something just by the tree line. My uncle fires his gun off into the air to spook whatever it is. It gets quiet and they can hear twigs snapping further away from their location. All 3 discuss whether they get the dog and follow whatever it was. They eventually all agree to just go back in their tents to get geared up. The dog is refusing to budge and whining in the corner. While they decide to go looking for it, the owner says that he'll stay behind with the dog. My uncle and the other friend basically say, screw it, and decide to stay too. They restart the fire and spend the next several hours of calm, playing with the dog and chatting. They finally get to sleep after those several hours, and after the dog has gone back to normal. The following morning, they had a few finger-sized holes in their tents that weren't there the night before. One of the guys is missing his backpack, which had some beers and mostly trail guides in it. The food is fine, the fire is fine, the dog is fine. But they also notice the car has a noticeable handprint on the glass. My uncle described it at the time as the size of a gorilla's. While they're inspecting the car, they find everything to be in working order, except the antenna is bent and the hood ornaments looked like it was snapped off. They all nod at each other and nervously chuckle. My uncle says he should have laughed about it at the time, but instead all three friends just got really quiet and decided to pack up. They didn't talk about it much until they got back on the road. One of them first joked about it being Bigfoot, then they all started talking about it and acting like big macho tough guys. They stopped at the first town they passed to grab a bite and gas up. The local diner was all abuzz about a huge Bigfoot sighting that night. A farmer lost a few of his chickens nearby where my uncle was camping. Eyewitnesses reported seeing what they said was a small family of Bigfoots meandering through the area over the past week. My uncle and his friends chimed in and made a lot of friends that day. When they got back to the East Coast, they bragged about it, but to this day, my uncle admits that he was scared, knowing that he probably went to sleep with a Bigfoot entirely within his personal space. Number 18. I was a medical student, working late in the anatomy lab, revising for upcoming exams, very tired but also determined. It's around 21:45. The medical school is attached to a large hospital, and the anatomy lab shares some space as the hospital mortuary. The anatomy technician is my bro. I have his access cards for the door. Getting restless, I decide to take a walk around. I need to piss, and I can't be bothered to go upstairs to the hospital entrance once. There's a toilet in the changing room. I walk through scrub room, past the screen that looks into the mortuary. I'm in the change room, having a piss. Suddenly, I can hear a muffled sobbing. I whip around and leave the bathroom. Just then, the sobbing gets louder. I can hear water running. No one is in the scrub room, the tables are clear, and all the doors are closed. I still can hear crying, and I cannot work out where it's coming from. There's a massive crashing sound, and the crying stops. I keep running, grab all my things, and leave. I never studied in the anatomy lab after that. Number 19. I was working as a cop, and I got into a dingy apartment owned by a chupacabra dreamer and her drug-dealing boyfriend. Looking around, I'm trying to identify the smell. I open the sliding door to a small closet like 2 feet deep in the bedroom. These Catholics and their family values. That's where they keep the kids. All day when mom is at work, maybe all night too. At that point, it takes everything the narrator has not to just strangle the boyfriend. Number 20. I joined the Navy in 2010 and worked in a healthcare MOS. Deploy, I worked in a forward operating hospital. We all slept on plywood, half the buildings had no light or electricity. Overall, the corridors were pretty terrible, and we didn't have any supplies. It was about 2:30, and mortars were going off like popcorn. I get up and get restless because first time dealing with a very common mortar fire. I walk out of the quarters and chill out by the docking bay for a bit. I overhear a large explosion and run over to the area. It was in the area I was just sleeping in. Luckily, no one else was resting there. I would have died if I would just have gone back to bed like I usually do. Number 21. I was around 10, and I lived in a quiet village on the edge of a moor. I went to an abandoned farm. and I was looking for a possible way to get in the main farmhouse. There were wooden boards on all the windows and doors. I managed to pull off a board from a window and go inside. I start to explore, and there's no light other than the window I just broke. I start to climb the stairs. Then an unearthly voice howls, "Get out!" I run miles back to my home. No way anyone could have gotten there to mess with us. It was such a growly voice too. Number 22. This story is from history. Andreev recalls this story of a mother eating her child. Luka Bandar lived in Belosikva in the district of Chornuki in the region of Poltava. He was 38 years old. He had a wife named Kulina and a 5-year-old daughter named Vaska. Before collectivization, he owned 5 hectares of land and therefore belonged to the class of poor peasant. In March of 1933, Luka, although distended with hunger, went away to some distant villages in search of something to eat and did not return. About a week later, his wife, Kulina, died of starvation, and the collective farm brigade removed her body to the crematory. After she was cremated, the neighbors started wondering what happened to her daughter Vaska, who was not known to have died. They entered Kulina's house and began to search for the child. In the oven, they found a pot containing a boiled liver, heart, and lungs. In the warming oven, they found a large earthenware bowl filled with freshly salted meat. In the cellar under a barrel, they discovered a small hole in which a child's head, feet, and hands were buried. It was the head of Kulina's little daughter, Vaska. Number 23. Alright, here's my story. It's not really scary, but when I was a kid, I was terrified when I thought about this. I live in Tri-City, Poland, which is one of those wacky, small suburban neighborhoods built in the previous decade. I lived on the southern border, and there's a few old huts that were probably built here in the 1950s. It's almost like slums. Living in those huts are a few poor and very mean families, living together in 2 or 3 small houses. On the east from our neighborhood, there used to be a long but narrow meadow with a hill. On that hill there was an old workshop looking similar to one of the poor houses. I used to hang out with other kids there, looking for clues as to what resides there. All across the district, kids told stories about this place. On Christmas Eve at our school, one guy told me that his friend went there and saw a granny crying after the Halemba mine accident and an old guy with an axe. After that, me and a few of my other friends decided to break into that building. I gathered the kids and we went up a hill. One of the kids found a large stone and tried to break a window with it. We heard a voice from inside and, terrified, we ran away, only to try it again next week. I actually don't remember how, but we managed to open the door. The inside was full of trash. In one room there was a desk and lots of papers. We found a door to the other side of the hill. The house was as wide as the field and blocked the way to the other side, and went outside. After a while we decided to go back because it started getting late. Just when we were leaving the old house, 3 teenagers approached us. They looked at us, and one of them took out a knife. We quickly ran back to our old neighborhood. Some time later, we found a dead cat with its guts removed, and after some more time, the house was burnt down. Number 24. I've lived in Moscow since I was 2 years old. The city has racial tensions. Many locals view and judge foreign persons as leeches, parasites, and subhumans. I am ethnically from Kaz, so I appear more Chinese or Asian in features. I'm driving to visit my friend 2 hours away. It's night time, and the road ahead is closed off with vehicles and around 20 to 30 pedestrians. The car I have been trailing behind is in view. The pseudo-checkpoint pedestrians are breaking the windows and pulling the passengers out of the car. They are being beaten with clubs and set on fire. I'm visualizing this occurring to me while reversing my vehicle and driving back to the city. I now carry a weapon on person and one hidden in vehicle. Police are corrupt and crime is vastly underreported. Sorry for some grammar errors on the last one. Like he said, he was from Moscow, so his English probably wasn't the best. Number 25. 12 years ago, my parents died in a car wreck on the interstate. I had no siblings or close family, just an uncle I barely knew on the other side of the country, and he and my dad didn't get along. I'm 18, so I'm still living alone in my parents' house, just me and my dog. It's been only a week, and I still cry myself to sleep, just like every other night. Something wakes me up. The floor creaks in the hallway outside my room like someone being stealthy. The dog is growling like a madman, and his hair is standing up. My mom slowly leans her face around the door. Go to sleep. Everything is alright now. It sounds like her, but it doesn't. Her lips aren't moving like a normal person's, and her head is at a crazy angle. It slowly moves down until she's about an inch off the floor, staring at me the whole time. My dad shoots his head around the corner like an alien. The dog is whimpering now. My blood feels like ice water in my veins. Go to sleep, son. It'll all be over soon. Again, it sounds like him, but it's just wrong somehow. My mom's head shoots around the corner at lightning speed, and so does my dad's. I grab my phone and dial 911. As quickly and quietly as possible, I tell the dispatcher there's a home invasion at my address and hang up. I lay there with my eyes shut tight, heart pounding like a drum, fists clenching my sheets and tears running down my face. I hear the creaks and voices again. Are you asleep yet, son? It'll be all right soon. Then a giggle that sounds like nothing human. Then I hear sirens. Thank God. Steps pounding up to the front door, muffled shouts, and then they kick the door in. Footsteps racing out of the hallway. The police search the house, and during the investigation, the detective tells me, grim-faced, "We found your parents' faces on the floor downstairs." I moved after that. They never found the sick people that did this, and I don't know what would have happened if the cops hadn't showed up so fast. I'm 30 years old, and I still have nightmares. Number 26. 3 years ago, fresh out of high school, my buddy and I wanted to drive up to Wisconsin in the middle of the night. We jump in his car, grab drinks, and go, chatting it up in the car. We get on a very long straight road. There's an endless empty cornfield on our left, a house on our right, with driveways and mailboxes every 15 feet or so. Behind the houses is another endless cornfield. Sitting in the passenger seat watching the mailboxes go by. I look ahead and I see some trash bags piled up near a mailbox. A big stack of trash bags up to my chest. Then I see something between the trash and the mailbox. It looks like a guy with a bedsheet draped over him. Really easy to see him because it was bright white. Our headlights lit him up. Seriously, it was so comical and weird how he was waving his arms around, the sheets billowing in the wind. I follow him with my head as we pass by. Dude, did you see that nut job? My friend has no idea what I'm talking about. I force him to turn around while explaining what I saw. He obviously doesn't believe me. We turn around 4 driveways down. I looked for him, but I couldn't see anything. The driveways were really long, and it was a long way to sprint. There were endless empty cornfields on the other side of the road. We ended up heading back home after that for whatever reason. Seriously, if it wasn't for how cliche it looked, it would freak me out thinking back on it. There's no way a guy could have ran up those driveways without us seeing him, as bright as he was, and didn't see him anywhere in the fields. No idea how to explain this. Number 27. It was 2005. I was 10, my brother was 23. I live in Mexico with my brother, who's a street cholo. He says he's going out. It's about 9 p.m. My mom goes to sleep. I stay up playing Blowout on Xbox. At about 11 p.m., I hear the front gate open. Someone at the door, trying to open it by force. The door opens. My brother runs in and slams the door and looks through the window. I turn on the light and notice he's changed. Change of clothes, he's got skinnier, his hair grew from a buzz cut a couple hours ago to being halfway down his back. He doesn't look like my brother, but I know he is. He's also got a beard, but it's not too long. I ask him what's wrong. His response is, I made it back. He gives me a hug. He smells terrible. He takes a shower, shaves his head, shaves his beard. He never mentions what happens ever again. After this, he could always predict stuff before it happened. One example is he told me today's not a good day for a run. That same day was when the Boston Marathon bombing took place. Number 28. My dad was responsible for taking care of and cleaning up after his little sisters. They were around 1 and 3 at the time, and they had a playroom downstairs with all their toys. They went to bed, and he went down to the playroom to clean everything up. He cleaned it all, and it was spotless by the time it was done. He goes to sleep when he finishes. He's woken up the next morning by his dad screaming at him. Apparently there was a meat cleaver left on one of the play tables. He tells his dad he didn't leave it there because he didn't. No one else was in the house to put it there. Once again, they never figured out how it got there. Number 29. This happened back in the 1990s. My high school friend's youngest brother was always sick. No flu, no cold, not even a rash passes him by. He constantly going from pneumonia to sky-high fever to random bruising to whatever. The little guy has seen a cadre of doctors at this point, a dozen of tests. A nun from our school suggests someone laid a curse down on his family. All friends of the family must pray for him, and tell everyone they know to pray too. Word gets around to the neighborhood witch. She usually does readings, Thanksgiving rituals for luck and obtaining jobs, and for good health of unborn babies. I make plans to hang out with my friend over the weekend. Sorry man, the witch is coming by this Saturday. He said no one outside the family is allowed in. Back then, I used to believe this was exploiting desperate people for money. The rich did some ritual involving ash, dirt, and water on the family's front yard. Fast forward to 2016. The kid has been healthy ever since. The rashes cleared up within a week, and he never again had anything more serious than a cold or a headache. Number 30. I was around 11 years old, hanging out with my friends in the park. It was late night, and I decided to go home. While I was going home, I found a man standing beside a bush. I come closer because my house is that way. The man's holding something, and it looks like a knife. I'm partially scared, but I still continue to walk. The man starts yelling at me. "Straosses pizza, ti materina. What do you want, mother?" It gets real. The man starts running toward me. I start running away like Sanic. I don't look back. I arrive at my house, and I'm crying, and I'm out of breath. My mom is confused, but she still lets me in. I tell her the story. She doesn't believe me. Number 31. During the morning, I went to exam assembly briefings, and I saw my classmate. We are really close. She's usually cheerful, but that day she seemed quiet, and her face looked different. I decided to stay away from her. Let's call her the girl from now on. I hope she's not reading this. Exam. I'm waiting outside the classroom before we can come in. We took the exam in the classroom because the halls are occupied. There I hear Anna complaining. Anna is also my classmate, but I don't know her well. She was complaining about how the girl followed her, asking for blood, saying she was hungry. She thought it was some sort of joke or a prank or something. My buddy, who's a funny guy, heard it, and he too thought it was a joke. So he went to the girl and mocked her. I forget what he said, but he did mock her. The girl was still quiet. The examiner asked us to come in. Before he went inside, the girl opened her mouth. She said to some of us, "There's no use doing this. You're all going to hell anyway." So later we sat in our classroom. The seating arrangement goes me, Anna, and the girl. I overhear the girl whispering to Anna, "I need blood. Give me blood. I'm hungry." I'm WTFing at this point. She was pretty smart though, and when the examiner passed her by, she became quiet. She whispered again. Anna's pretty scared, and she asked me for help. I'm scared too. I can't even use a calculator to solve math problems. I told Anna to calm down. The girl stared at her. Anna started to lose it. She panicked, screamed, cried, passed out. Everyone is shocked. The examiner tries to do something. Some student also cried. During the chaos, the girl started to clap her hands slowly. It was very creepy, and her face looked very different now. I nearly peed my pants. The examiner started to call for help. One teacher came in. She's very religious and a holy practitioner. She stepped in the classroom. The girl ran forward and tried to bite her shoulder. More male teachers came in to hold the girl and bring her out. Before she's been brought out, she looked directly toward my buddy, who mocked her a while ago. She said, "I'll see you later." She was brought out. The exam is postponed due to shock. I heard stories that her grandfather had recently passed away, and somehow something came to possess her. The day after what happened, she came to school, cheerful as before, wearing a talisman that was supposed to protect her. Also, my buddy told me that when he went home that day, he felt like something was following him. He even heard the sound of teeth clenching behind him. So he headed to a holy place and stayed there until it's gone. Number 32. I was around 13 to 15. There was a super old condemned hospital from the early 1900s in town. 4 friends and I decided to break in to see what we could find. Just before we start getting ready, one of my friends backs out. However, he asks us to video the exploration for him to watch later. We enter in through the bottom floor. We start hearing weird creaks and groans, which we believe is commonplace due to the building being condemned. We decide to go to the basement. It's a morgue for the hospital. We hear voices and laughter. Eventually we get home, and I start watching the video with my other friend. The video starts off normal. However, while you can hear us talking about the creaks and groans, you cannot actually hear the camera pick up the creaks and groans. Then, the camera moves into the basement. Suddenly the camera cuts out. I nearly crapped my pants. I still think about it to this day. Number 33. A ton of unnerving stuff went down in the house I grew up in. The majority of the stuff that happened was your run-of-the-mill things like stuff disappearing and then turning up in strange places, hearing voices, being grabbed, feeling uneasy in certain rooms, temperatures dropping, the usual. My childhood friend, who was over so much that it was basically her second home, would sleepwalk at my house but never in her home. A few times I woke up covered in objects that she hurled at me in her sleep. When I was a baby, my cousin stayed with us until he finished elementary school. My mom told me that when he lived with us, he'd seen a middle-aged man on the top of the staircase who stared at him for a moment before walking off into the guest room. Considering that was supposed to be his bedroom, you can understand why it made him so uneasy. Honestly, I couldn't stand going near that guest room either. I spent a majority of my time in that house bolting to and from my room so I wouldn't have to linger around outside that bedroom too long. It was always cold and held this really ominous atmosphere, so much that even my guests in the house who hadn't been told about the room would express unease if we ever had to go in there to grab something. But the scariest thing that ever happened to me in that house was when I was in grade school. I was having a slumber party with some friends, and we decided to sleep in the living room so we could have more space. I turned everything off in my room, locked the door, and we all went downstairs. A little while into us hanging out, we heard some commotion upstairs. Everyone voted for me to go check it out since it was my house and all. We always hung a big blanket at the base of the stairs to control the temperature circulation, since it was such an old farmhouse. I remember being so terrified to open it and see what was behind it. No monsters were waiting for me behind the curtain, but at the top of the staircase I could see my room, door wide open with the lights on and a faint noise coming from inside. At this point, I told my friends what I saw, and they egged me on to just do it and go up the stairs. Inside there was nothing out of the ordinary, nothing moved, no 666 painted across the wall in goat's blood. The sound was coming from a radio, on AM frequency, which we all know that no grade schooler in their bright mind would have set it on. So needless to say, I turned it off, looked up, and got the hell out of there. I hit the bottom of the staircase, rounded the corner, and barely had time to catch my breath before my friends started freaking out and asking if I was alright. But before they could even get up out of their sleeping bags, we heard something very loud bolt down the stairs. I swear, I felt the house shake and was petrified a few feet away from the bottom of the staircase. I saw the blanket move as if something really had stopped abruptly behind it, but I never mustered up the courage to check behind it. My friends and I have spent the night huddled next to my mom's room with the door left ajar. Also worth noting, after I moved out for college, my sleepwalking friend told me that my mom had seen a woman drag herself across the floor from the landing of the staircase behind the couch she was sitting on. My mom says she didn't want me to find out because she didn't want to scare me. Number 34. I was driving back from my buddy's house an hour away. My town's population is about 1,300. Western Central. Nearest actual town is about 30 minutes away. On a state highway, there's a stretch for about 20 minutes with absolutely no cell phone service. I'm driving along, jamming some Tool, no spooks at this point. Suddenly, fog, which is rare for August. Then, I see a flash. After I get flashbanged, I can't see anything, but I keep driving to avoid being sucked out of the car. I realize it was a transformer blowing up. I call my buddy once I get service to see if he still has power. He says that it's still normal, and then he hangs up the phone. Once I get to Crescent, the nearest town, I see a tweaker in a dead sprint down the sidewalk. It's 1 a.m. About 10 seconds later, I see a cop, deja vu, round a corner with his lights on. Around 30 seconds later, I see 2 OGE trucks, which are from the Powerline service, going in the opposite direction. I get to the interstate and notice it's unusually empty for a Friday night. A Mitsubishi Eclipse wants to get in the right lane in front of me, and I flash my lights to let her over. Then she changes her mind. I coincidentally get off at the same exit. I miss mine because I was in deep thought. There's a red light, and I'm continuing to blast Undertow. The next red light, she's still in front of me. I'm backtracking. At this point it's weird, because literally nobody else is out, and we're both backtracking. Green light. 10 seconds later I politely tap the horn, so she wakes up. We proceed. No road rage detected. I pass her and speed up to avoid a brake check. She gets in my lane, follows me the long way home. I decide to just park and walk into the apartment. She parks 2 spots away, gets out. No words were exchanged. She looks like a 30-year-old woman. She's about 50 feet behind me when I look over my shoulder, walk into my apartment, around the corner, and wait a few minutes. I go out with a Beretta M92 and a 17-round mag. Nowhere to be found. I make a lap around the complex to make sure she doesn't live here or something, and yet she's nowhere to be found. Since I've had no problems. Number 35. I'm heading into the woods on a camping trip with my college buddies. Me, my now ex-girlfriend Sarah, her friend Jill, Jill's roommate Rachel, my roommate Steve, who was the nerd of the group, my friend Fred, and Fred's roommate Bill. Bill had a reputation as a creeper, but he was really a nice guy. He did charity stuff, and he was the type that would give you the shirt off his back. Before I knew him well, I got stranded on the side of the road and I gave him a call. He drove 3 hours in the middle of the night to pick me up. Bill was also a survivalist, and he was constantly bombarding us with random trivia and survival stuff. He once showed me some smoke grenades he rebuilt into chlorine gas grenades. Why? Because he could. We all head into the woods to stay at a cabin Steve's uncle built. We get there and the cabin is low quality. It's literally made of plywood with exposed insulation. There's no windows and only 3 rooms. The only thing that was nice about it was a wood-burning stove. We set up sleeping bags on the old army cots in the 2 bedrooms. Girls in one room, boys in the other. We start a fire in the wood stove to warm the place up and start talking about what we're gonna do in the morning. We cook chili on top of the stove. Fred and Bill start trading racist jokes at each other. It's their thing. Bill is practically a white supremacist, and Fred is a nationalist Asian, so he thinks the Japanese Empire should have won World War II. Naturally, Fred and Bill get along, and that's why they become roommates. The girls are weirded out by their antics, except Rachel, who's ignoring us all and playing with a Zippo. Jill needs to pee, but the only place to do it is behind a bush. The girls go together for some reason, and we can hear them giggling and talking while Jill squats behind the bush. Ignore them and laugh while Bill tells Fred his ancestors weren't nuked enough, and Fred calls him a filthy Gaijin round eye. The girls suddenly come running back, complaining about a stench. What stench? Oh, God. It smells like roadkill rotting in the sun and something metallic, like burnt copper or smoldering wire. Holy hell, did that come out of you? Jill squawks in indignation. We all head inside to get away from the stench. Bill and Fred finish their racist jokes at each other and move on to mocking Jews in the Holocaust. Suddenly, there's a loud screech outside the cabin. Everyone but Bill jumps and looks at the door. Bill calmly announces, "It's a fox. Chill." The conversation and dinner resume. Everyone eventually heads off to bed. We spend the next day hiking and exploring. We found a pond, and the girls, minus Rachel, wanted to swim in it. Steve points out that it's too cold to swim and the pond is stagnant runoff from the hills. Bill suggests plinking, and I get out my .22 rifle and we shoot at an empty chili can. Everyone participates, except Rachel, who just sorts of stand off to one side to play with her lighter. Bill suggests getting out his fall and shooting with it, but the girls don't want to shoot a big gun, so he's disappointed. I didn't even know he brought it, but it doesn't surprise me. We head back in the cabin to play Risk. Bill and Rachel end up wiping us all out and ending in a stalemate. Night falls and we build another fire in the stove. We play charades. Yes, we're that bored. Steve is pantomiming when suddenly there's a loud shriek outside. Was that another fox? Everyone looks at Bill. Bill replies, "Nope, that was a rabbit's death scream. The only time that they make a sound like that is when they're dying." Well, thanks for that creepy trivia, Bill. We continue the charades. Suddenly, a horrible stench fills the cabin. Everyone complains and the girls retreat to their room to escape the smell. We hear a thump against the door to the cabin, like a knock. Steve cautiously opens the door to investigate. Blood splattered on the door. There's a dead, disemboweled, skinless rabbit lying on the ground right outside the door. Did the fox throw a dead rabbit at our door? We're creeped out, but we decide to not tell the girls. Nothing else happens, and the stench eventually fades away and we all go to bed. The next day is similar to the first. hiking, exploring. I'm flirting with Sarah, my ex-girlfriend, constantly. Fred keeps hitting on Jill, who is doing her best to make it obvious she's ignoring his ass. Bill keeps pointing out edible plants and other survival stuff to the group. I would suspect that he's trying to impress girls, but he always did that kind of thing. Did you notice that most praying mantises are actually agnostic? We started a game of freeze tag in the woods. Girls cheat and combine tag with hide and seek. Everyone gets into it. Eventually, everyone has been discovered and tagged except Bill. Where the hell is he? We give up and loudly shout for him to come out. He drops out of the tree we were all standing next to, grinning. We head back to cabin. Everybody plays Risk while I make out with Sarah. Suddenly, Steve runs in. Dude, what the hell? What? Dude, how did you do that? What are you talking about? From the front, you just called out Bill's name. No, I didn't. When? Just now. Clearly, I've been in here the whole time. I dismissed it as a failed prank. Then, Fred comes in. I'm pissed now. What the hell, guys? Shh! Listen. Suddenly, I hear a voice out in the woods. Okay, Bill, game's over. Come on out now. I yell, who's out there? Silence. Then, okay, Bill, game's over. Come out now. Bill shrugs and steps outside. I'm here. What do you want? Silence. Maybe whoever it is hadn't thought this far ahead. Bill stands there for maybe a minute, then comes back inside. Dude, are you nuts? We don't know what could be out there. In typical Bill fashion, he doesn't care. Instead, he calmly gets out his FAL, which is the biggest rifle I've ever seen, and slaps a 30-round clip in it and chambers around. He then turns on the flashlight clipped on the barrel and walks outside. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, leave without me. We wait, and Steve's standing watch by the door. We can see Bill's flashlight in the woods. We watch as he pauses, scans all around him, then continues deeper into the woods. Eventually, the light disappears. Sarah and Jill are scared and they retreat to their room. Bill hangs out with us three guys as we wait for Bill to return. 20 minutes pass and no sign of Bill. If this is a joke, it's not funny. Fred swears it's not a joke, or if it is, then Bill didn't tell him about it. I grab my .22. Fred retrieves a knife from Bill's camping gear. Steve and Rachel are still standing at the front door. Suddenly, Steve calls out, Bill? I'm here. Fred and I come running back to the door and look outside. We can dimly see the silhouette of someone standing just inside the tree line. Bill, what took you so long? I'm here. I start getting a creepy vibe. Bill, what are you doing? What do you want? The hell? We want you to come back inside the cabin, moron. Then we see a dim light bobbing around in the trees in the direction Bill went. Wait, I'm suddenly deafened and partially blinded by the muzzle flash of a gunshot going off right near my head. Rachel has produced a snub-nosed revolver from somewhere within her jacket and fired a shot up into the air. We have guns! Whoever you are, leave us the hell alone! We can't see the figure out in the darkness anymore, but the light is bobbing faster as the owner runs toward the cabin. Bill bursts out of the tree line with his rifle. Why are you still here? I told you to leave if I took more than 10 minutes. It's been half an hour. Who's shooting? Dude, where the hell were you? Something was following me down the trail, so I fishhooked to ambush it, but it went back the way I came. I waited a little longer in case it was trying the same thing. Then I took my time coming back so I could hear it if it followed me again. He then gave us all dirty looks and said, I told you to leave me if I was gone for more than 10 minutes. It's like you people have never seen horror movies before. Jill and Sarah freaked out, but Rachel just calmly swaps out the spent round in her revolver for a fresh one. I'm not even sure she's old enough to legally own a handgun. Well, now she knows how she handled herself living on the streets as a homeless person. Bill gathers us in the front room and insists on a rational discussion of what happened. We eventually decide that it was someone pranking us, and they're just really good at imitating voices, and repeat the same phrases we shouted earlier, and is in the middle of nowhere screwing with some college students. Right. We eventually go to sleep, but I notice Bill kept his rifle within arm's reach. The next morning, there was a dead something or another with its skin missing, and its guts splattered all over the cabin. Bill thought it was either a possum or a raccoon. The girls are thoroughly creeped now and insist on leaving. Sarah is convinced that it's some serial killer and the dead animals are a warning or some sick gift. Bill isn't entirely convinced the dead animals weren't left there by a bobcat or something, but he's also convinced that there's a person out in the woods messing with us. Steve and Fred don't know what is going on, but they don't think it's funny. We eventually decide that we're going to find whoever is messing with us and get them back. The girls are too scared to leave the cabin. Bill recruits Fred as his assistant, and they spend the whole day building booby traps, digging pits, and rigging perimeter alarms from empty cans of pebbles. Steve retrieves a hatchet from the woodpile and nominates himself captain of the creepy cabin self-defense squad, since it's his uncle's place. Everyone basically ignores him, and Bill becomes the de facto leader since he seems to know what he's doing. Finally, he and Fred finish whatever the hell they were doing in the woods, and we all sit around the table playing cards. None of us really know how to play poker, except Jill, who wipes us all out. Then we wait, and wait, and wait some more. At this point, I don't care how creepy this guy is. Whoever is messing with us better show up or I'm going to be pissed. I regret that wholeheartedly. Just before sunset, Bill instructs Sarah and Jill to shelter in the back room and has me and Rachel guard the front door with our guns. What are you going to be doing? I'll be up in a tree waiting to ambush whoever it is. They'll be expecting us to all be holed up in the cabin. I explain why this is a terrible idea. Bill ignores me and tells us not to shoot unless we know 100% for sure it isn't him. He disappears in the trees. Jill's insisting we all go home, and keeps asking how we know Bill isn't just an idiot who's making stuff up to look good. Fred insists he knows what he's doing. We hear a rattle from one of our perimeter alarms. I crack the door open. I can't see anything outside. Who's out there? Come on out. It's my voice again. Who the hell are you? Come out where I can see you. I'm here. Bill's phrase, but my voice still. I'm seriously creeped out now. Come on out where I can see you. I'm here. Come on out. Against my better judgment, I step outside the door and shine my flashlight at the trees. There's something standing in the tree line with their back towards us. They're dressed the same as Bill, but they look filthy, and its hair is longer. Who the hell are you? No response. Turn around so I can see you. Still nothing. It just stood there. I have a gun. I'll shoot you if you don't turn around. It didn't say anything, but whoever or whatever it was, it just started convulsing, like it was laughing hysterically. But there's no sound. You better leave us alone. This is our property. You better get out of here. It was standing there with its back to us, but now it was jittering like, it's hard to describe, but like it was under a strobe light or something. I take a step forward, keeping the flashlight and my .22 aimed at it. Do you hear me? I was debating what to do next and wondering where the hell Bill was when I smelled that stench again. It was so sudden and so foul, it was like being hit in the face with a brick. I gagged at the stink of a dead animal decomposing in raw sewage and mold, and my eyes watered. I looked back to the cabin, at the others, and Rachel and Steve both shouted in shock. I spun around, and whatever it was suddenly much closer, halfway between the tree line and the cabin, with its back still toward us. I scrambled backward, toward the cabin. I'll never forget what happened next. Fred holds his knife over his head in a two-handed grip, and, I'm not kidding you, screams, Banzai! Charges out of the cabin toward the creepy strobe light person. No wonder he gets along so well with Bill. They're both crazy. Fred runs past me and immediately trips over a piece of stray firewood and face plants in the dirt, dropping his knife. The person is convulsing like something is crawling around underneath its skin. Rachel is shouting for us to get back inside the cabin, waving her revolver around, and suddenly the night is shattered by a deafening boom. The creature freezes motionless. Boom! Boom! Even louder than the gunshots is an ear-splitting shriek. If a banshee cougar was slowly lowered into a wood chipper, it wouldn't sound half as loud or disturbing as whatever the hell this scream was. The creepy person vanishes like they were never there. Bill sprints into view, switches on a flashlight on his rifle, and scans the tree line. "I told you idiots to stay in the cabin." After some time shouting back and forth, Bill and Fred investigate the outside while the rest of us go back in the cabin. They find some blood where the thing had been standing, or at least they think it's blood because it's pitch black. They can't find any footprints anywhere. And besides the fact that it set off one of the traps when it first appeared, none of the other traps are triggered. They come back inside the cabin and the rest of us has decided, screw this, we're getting the hell out of here. Bill calmly loads 3 rounds into his magazine to replace the ones he shot and asks if we really want to load our stuff into the van in the dark with that thing out there. Good point. We all pack our stuff up anyway so we can leave at first light. Everyone is too keyed up to sleep and sits up. The stench returns, that dead animal and burning copper smell. What the hell is that smell? Do you think it's the thing? Probably, but we just didn't smell it earlier when it was thud. Something just smacked into the wall of the cabin. Dead silence as we all grasp weapons, makeshift or otherwise, and nervously listen. After a loud moment, something thuds against the wall again. We don't move a muscle. Something begins scratching at the door, like slowly dragging your nails down the length of the door, then starting again after reaching the bottom. "Who's there?" "I'm here. Come on out." It was Steve's voice this time, and he paled visibly when he heard it. "Screw you! Who are you? What do you want?" "Game's over. Come on out." That's when Rachel fired a shot through the door. Despite the ringing in my ears, I can hear what sounded like the world's nastiest cat fight as something screeched, hissed, spat, and slammed into the door repeatedly. She fired a second shot and the noise stopped. After a long, uncomfortable silence, we heard the screeching again, but far off in the woods. Bill opened the door and told everyone, "Get your stuff in the van. We're leaving." As we started throwing stuff into the van, I noticed Bill had disappeared around the side of the cabin that the thumps on the wall had come from. I tossed the last of my stuff in the van, then followed. We found out what had thumped against the wall. There were 2 splotches of blood on the side of the cabin, and under each was half a full-grown deer. It ripped a deer in half and threw the halves at the cabin. Bill tells me not to say anything about this because it'll scare the girls. I'm pretty sure they're already scared, dude. We rejoin the others and make one last trip inside the cabin for the last of our stuff. Bill grabs me by the shoulder. "Steve, go start the van. Girls, go wait in the van. We'll get everything else." The girls made no argument and got into the van with Steve, leaving Bill, Fred, and I in the cabin. That's almost everything. Fred, you go check in the back and make sure we have everything. Then, Bill physically pulled me and Fred out of the cabin while we gave him a "what the hell" look. And then I saw someone else in the back of the cabin, wearing filthy clothes like Bill's, packing things up. Bill quietly pulled us out of the cabin, and I pointed my rifle at it. I heard a pop like a firecracker going off, and something smacked me in the leg. I looked down at my feet and saw a spoon. I looked up just in time to see Bill pull the pin from a second grenade, one of those big smoke-type grenades, release the spoon grenade with a pop, and throw it into the cabin. He then shut the door and locked the handle with a deadbolt, and he took Steve's keys and stepped back. He looked at me and calmly said, "Thermite any second now." He then pointed at the cabin with his rifle and waited. Steve got out of the van and joined us, asking what the hell we were doing. Suddenly, we heard that ungodly screeching again, this time from inside the cabin. was like someone was trying to electrocute a burlap sack full of angry lynxes. Bill calmly explains to Steve that he had just set the cabin on fire with a homemade thermite grenade he'd brought along on the camping trip for no reason. "What the hell, man? You set fire to my uncle's cabin?" "Hey, my wrist set is still in there too," as if that made it even somehow. The screeching gets even louder and something slams into the door. Hard. Bill calmly dumps 10 or 15 rounds of .308 into the door and wall of the cabin. The inhuman shrieks get even louder. Smoke starts pouring out from under the cabin, and we can see an orange globe through the bullet holes. Can we leave now?" "No," Bill casually responds. "We need to make sure it doesn't burn down the whole forest too." "Dude, screw the forest. We can burn the whole state to the ground if it kills the thing and anything else like it. Also, I kinda wanna shoot it if it breaks out the cabin, so it doesn't seek revenge. I don't wanna have this crappy horror movie have a sequel." I realize this makes sense, not just because Bill's acting like if we're in a horror movie. The inhuman shrieks and something slamming repeatedly against the walls of the cabin continue for a good 20 minutes before falling silent. The girls get out of the van and join us as we watch the cabin burn to the ground. The heat from the fire is barely tolerable, and we're standing at least 30 feet away. The cabin finally collapses, and everyone but Bill gets in the van. He stands there, watching it burn, holding his rifle like he still expects some sort of monster to come charging out of the roaring inferno. I know for a fact he's going to be bragging to the entire campus about how we single-handedly slew a monster when we get back. Finally, the cabin has burnt to the point where it's just a crackling, smoldering pile of charcoal and ashes, not even a dim orange glow visible in the darkness. Bill stretches his limbs, then gets in the van and tells Steve to drive into the town so we can get gas and breakfast. We arrive in a town of maybe 400 people an hour later, combination gas station / diner. Steve told his uncle that the cabin burned down because the chimney for the wood stove got clogged or something and caught fire. His uncle doesn't care because it was a crappy cabin he built in a single weekend, and he's just glad we're all okay and didn't burn the woods down. We've never gone back there, but Steve's uncle has gone camping there several times, mostly during hunting season, and hasn't seen or heard anything odd. Other than the skeletal remains of a deer torn in half next to what's left of our cabin, that is. Bill is the only one of us crazy enough to continue to go camping. You murder one creepy monster in a fire, you sort of lose any fear of the woods. Number 36. Bill reminds me of this obviously PTSD'd out dude that I used to run with that went by Sean. He was chill if he liked you. He would do literally anything for anyone he remotely cared about. He even drove 3 hours away to bail his ex-fiancée out of jail when she got a DUI. He seriously had some mental issues though. This guy had the air around him like something just wasn't right. His girlfriend said that he spent a lot of time in the desert. Anyway, I was out at a concert with a group of friends. Sean, his girlfriend, my girlfriend, and another buddy. The concert is wrapping up, people are leaving, and Sean is buying concert swag for him and his girlfriend. We're all pretty trashed. Time to go home, only a few stragglers left heading out of the venue. We're walking in the parking lot. Sean hits a dead stop. He sobers up instantly. "Stop, guys, stop." "The hell, dude?" "Yeah, those 2 guys up there, see 'em?" I can barely make them out on the far side of the parking lot. "Yeah, what about 'em?" "They're gonna be trouble, trust me, both of them. You take the girls, I'm gonna deal with these guys and bring the car to the front. Stay inside until I call. You tracking? Want me to get security?" "Nah, man." "Okay, dude, whatever." About 5 minutes later he calls, and we pile into the car. Shauna scuffed up pretty good, but grinning ear to ear. What happened, man? What's up with your face? Oh, they just wanted to talk. I got it taken care of. No big deal, man. He never talked about it again. Number 37. I moved into a new house, and I'm pretty sure something lives in my attic. The entrance is right above my computer desk in my room, so it really freaks me out. The first night I was here, I heard scratchings coming from the ceiling, and I was pretty angry because the previous tenant didn't mention any problems with raccoons or any other animal in the ceiling. So anyway, the next morning, I decided to open the attic. And let me just say now, that was a terrible idea. When I first opened it, it was slightly painted shut, but not so much that it was hard to open. It just took a little extra force. Anyway, I looked inside the attic, and there was nothing, so I closed it back and went on my way. But I noticed something. After I opened it the first time, I kept hearing it creak, slide, and just plain drop down, as though someone kept opening and closing it. It honestly made me really paranoid, so one night I stuck a piece of paper in the crack so if it opened, the paper would fall and I'd know. I slept pretty bad that night because I kept thinking about what could be in the attic. So anyways, when I woke up the next morning, the first thing I did was check to see if it had been opened. The paper was on the floor. I live a little bit out in the country, though not too absurdly far. We're camping. The parents were out of town for the weekend. My dad and I made a trail into our backyard when I was 6, and, in a small clearing, he made a fire pit where we would camp every once in a while. We got a campfire going, and we started roasting marshmallows, saving some hot dogs for later. We did some stupid teenager stuff, sang some songs from Frozen, campfire songs, etc. We also did this thing where you spin around a bat and try to walk. Later in the night, we decided to roast the hot dogs. However, I forgot condiments. We also need more metal hangers to roast them above the fire. Nick says he'll go get them, but I secretly didn't trust them in my house unsupervised. I'm walking back to get ketchup and some mustard, and I see the light in my room is on. Strange. I'm pretty sure I left it off. I'm a forgetful lad, so I chalked it up to having a crappy brain that day. I go inside and get the ketchup and mustard. I do an absolutely terrible job of mincing an onion and putting the pieces in a ramekin. Before I leave, I go to my room, turn the light on, and grab 4 hangers. I'm about to exit the room and turn the light off. That's when it hits me. The light was on when I was walking up to the house, and the switch itself was flipped off when I got into my room. That means someone physically switched off my light while I was still in the house. That means that someone was in my house. I grab my Bowie knife because it makes me not scared. First things first, always check the closet. It's one of those sliding mirror ones. I basically rip it open and start stabbing. It couldn't be Nick, Mike, or Lewis. I changed their names, by the way, because they were all back at the campfire, and the trail is the only way back to my house. I check every nook and cranny in between the upstairs bedroom and the first floor. I get to the living room without finding anything. The back sliding glass door is still open, and I make a run for it. I booked it to the campsite. Everyone's fine, and I tell them we all have to get into the house right now. Anna was like, "What the hell? Why? What's wrong?" I straight up told her, which was a bad idea. She wanted to stay far away from the house, reasonably. I quickly explained that if we all went inside and looked, it would be a lot safer and we could potentially catch the guy trying to invade my home. Lewis, Nick, and Mike all say okay because they're ready for some adventure. Anna's still scared, but she comes with. While I'm in the house, I give Nick and Lewis our 2 kitchen knives and Mike gets a glorified steak knife. I stick nearby Anna while Nick and Lewis check upstairs. Mike checks the downstairs bathroom. I notice that Anna's holding the hand that isn't holding the Bowie knife. Anna stays by me the rest of the night. When you go back out and cook the hot dogs, after locking all the doors, of course. I don't think I had good sleep for at least a month. And that's how my home invader was my best wingman. Number 39. I was 6 years old and I used to play a lot with my friends in the woods. We knew our way around the woods fairly well, and we always had location points and various other places we used to identify where we were. Me being adventurous, I came up with the bright idea of going further out than we'd ever gone before. We took a group of 4 people, and we settled to follow a dry ravine in which we'd never really traveled before. We saw some pretty interesting things. There was always trash and stuff littered in the woods, but this was different. We saw clothes torn and ripped to shreds, toys laying around and strewn. We even stumbled upon a rusty truck, which looked like somebody had lived in it. It got kinda scary a little, 'cause the further you went, the more occasionally you'd see some blood, or an animal carcass. Sunset rolls around, and we reach a clearing with a small run-down shack. My parents at the time always hated that I would go out and play all day and I would never hear them, so they came up with the idea of blaring an air horn. This comes later in the story. We all kinda approach the shack, and I tell one of my 3 friends to open the door. It felt eerie just standing in front of it, but nonetheless someone reaches for the door. Before they even put their hand on it, it shakes violently. It swings open and this thing just starts hissing and running after us all, giving us a chase we'd never had before in our lives. It runs on all 4s and is gray, but it has no hair. As we're bolting for our lives, I'm behind a bit, due to my damn breathing. I feel it catch up to me a bit, and without hesitation, I run faster and faster, slightly getting dizzier from not breathing. Finally, my parents blow the air horn. From behind me, I can almost hear the creature get upset, like it hated the noise. I turn around for a brief second and notice that it's gone. Finally, after another 30 minutes of running, we make it into the clearing. Going to bed that night was hard, but I was able to. We don't know what chased us, but we still went back into the woods, but stayed in our usual area. The only difference was that we always had the sense of something watching us. After a while, we stopped going into the woods. I'd occasionally go into the front yard or backyard and see dead animal carcasses mangled, and the occasional scratches on the side of the house. There were even times where my window was pecked on. After that experience, the woods always seemed a little scary, but I managed to get over the feeling. Number 40. I was around 7 or so at the time. I was living with my grandmother after my parents got divorced. The house belongs to a medium-sized town outside of El Paso. Some parts are still pretty rural. My grandmother has a huge garden, and it looks really menacing at night, and I always imagined something hiding out back and watching me in the brush. It was a pretty stormy night, flash flood warning if I remember correctly. The backyard would flood when it rained a lot, making it look like a pond. I would take advantage of this and play Jurassic Park with my toys, but that's besides the point. I always liked to be spooked, and I asked my mom if she had any stories growing up. She tells me that she and her friends used to play in the lot. There used to be a canal there, and they'd play in the water during the summertime. My grandmother would tell her that a La Lorena would get her if she stayed up late. My mom would have frequent nightmares about her wandering around the house saying, "Ay, mis hijos, ¿dónde están mis hijos?" One night has a different nightmare. That's how it went. She wakes up from a dream and feels spooked and looks outside. There's a witch-looking creature with long arms. The arms were long enough to embrace the entire backyard. She wakes up at this point. Little me is sufficiently spooked and stays away at night, still afraid. The storm is still raging outside and the wind is howling. I finally manage to fall asleep. I have a nightmare similar to my mom's. I turn over in my bed and see a figure standing out in the backyard. Looks like one of those tall things from that Marilyn Manson video. Beautiful people. I cover my eyes with my hands out of fear. When I uncover them, she's closer. Her long arms are to one side. She shuffles closer to my window on her stilt legs. I cover my eyes again, then uncover them. She's peeking in through my window, long matted hair covering her face. She's far enough inside that part of her torso is in now. My mind isn't sure where to go from here. I wake up. The storm is still beating pretty hard outside. Eventually I manage to go back to sleep. The morning comes and I wake up. The hot Texas sun dries up the pond in the yard within hours. No water save for some scattered puddles, and a biggish puddle at the center of the yard where the pond pools up. I go outside and wander for a bit. It's a Saturday, and there's nothing to do but screw around on my PlayStation 2. I get bored. Then I realize that the fence looks lopsided. I go to investigate and see that the fence is sunk into the ground fairly deep in the right side of the yard. There's no real reason for this to have happened unless a lot of weight was placed on top of it. The fence poles were held in place by cement, and the cement is covered up by mud too. It looks like the ground itself sank a bit. I remember the dream and run inside to tell Grandpa. He digs the poles out of the ground and mends the fence over a day or two. I still think La Lorena is after me, and I'm spooked for a few days. A week or so later, the incident is at the back of my mind, and I lay down to sleep. I have a nightmare like my mom's other one. It's daytime, and I'm doing normal stuff inside, a normal dream for the most part. I'm playing by the windows. Suddenly, I hear, "I miss heroes," and other stuff. I get spooked and run to the other side of my house. The dream continues normally from there. It was probably just the ground collapsing a bit from the storm, but it was spooky nonetheless. I have another story about my mom's childhood I'll share. Give me a bit to do some stuff. Alright, here's the story my mom told me as a kid. I was very small, and I was very interested in ghosts and aliens and the like. I asked my mom, and she tells me a story. She and her best friend at the time are having a sleepover. They hear what sounds like hooves and chains on the road outside. The kitchen window faces the road, and they look out the window. They seem like yellow and blue orbs of light floating down the road. They go past that side of the house, and they go around to the living room to see more of it. It goes past my grandma's house and gets about 2 houses further down. It begins to lift straight up into the sky. They're still spooked and unsure of what it is, and what to make of it. She's still not sure to this day, whenever I ask about it. This is my father's story. My dad's side of the family lives in Van Horn, Littletown, in the middle of the desert in Texas. My grandpa, who's on my dad's side, owns a gas station. It's still there, though under new management. My dad and my uncle are wandering around town since they're kids, and there isn't jack to do in Van Horn. As they're wandering around, it starts getting dark. The desert nights are extremely dark, and they're on the outskirts of town, where houses and businesses start to disappear, and the highway and desert starts to take over. They decide to start heading home, and they hear what sounds like hooves behind them. They turn around. There's a goat out of nowhere. They freeze, and it charges at them. They take off at the speed of light, the goat on their tail all the while. They get into town, and it's still after them. It chases them for a few blocks. They start to pray to God for help. They run for a few blocks more, and then the sound of the goat's hooves on the concrete starts to fade away. They come to a stop and turn around. No goat to be seen. They run to the gas station, since it's close to the house. 41. In 1992, me and some of my friends went to a camping trip on the island. Nice secluded place, we thought. Someone must have been following us, as my friend went to the bathroom in a bush and never came back. We heard screaming, so we assumed it was a prank. However, after he didn't come back for a while, we started to worry, and we thought he was kidnapped. He never came back. Number 42. I'm not saying this is paranormal weird. I'm not even really sure I believe in such things. But my front door keeps opening itself. I live in a terrace house, and I have a porch, and then about 3 feet to walk to the other door. I lock both doors when I go in and out. About 1 in every 10 times I come back, the porch door is still locked, but the front door is open a crack. I have looked and looked at the door and the lock, and I cannot see anything faulty with it. It isn't loose at all, and I cannot open it with any amount of force. If it was once or twice, I would think it didn't shut properly, but it's all the time. If loads of other things like this were happening, I might think I was having some kind of mental breakdown, but it's only this. Also, 4 or 5 times the porch door has been wide open, but the front door is still shut. Once I heard the door absolutely slam in the middle of the night. By the time I grabbed a truck breaker bar and shambled downstairs, nobody was there, but the door was open, and I assumed it was just some drunk guy messing around. Last thing is, 4 or 5 times the doorbell is rung, but when I get to the door, there's nobody there. The street is pretty open. It's not impossible for somebody to do it and run inside quickly, but they would have to be in the next 2 or 3 houses next to me, so I don't think it was a ding-dong ditch. Nothing else weird has happened, and I don't get any bad vibes, although I don't know if I would be especially sensitive to it if there was. I've lived here about 8 months now, and it's been happening the whole time, and I've never had a problem like this before, i.e. forgetting to lock my door isn't something I usually do. Number 43. 3 nights ago I was working on my car with my buddy. Behind my backyard is a bike trail that parallels a thin strip of woods. We heard a distinct help, and walked halfway to my back fence, then got creeped out and turned around. As I turned around, I heard a groan sound that cut off suddenly. We called the police and they found nothing. Regardless, it still creeped me out. That same night, I fell asleep on my couch. My couch is set up to make a bracket or a heart-shaped C. I fell asleep on one end of the C. I woke up at 6 a.m. and I couldn't move. It felt like I was being restrained. I could only move my eyes and stay on the other end of the couch. Parallel from me, however, was a figure of a man. He stood still and was only shown by his silhouette. The couch portion perpendicular to me had my girlfriend laying there, dead or half dead. Her blood had rested at the bottom of her body and had no color. She said something to me, but I do not know what it was. The man just stood there, and eventually he was gone and I could move. I would have tossed it aside as a dream, but I never re-woke or opened my eyes. Also, the dream made my living exactly how it was in reality. My water bottle on the table and every little detail. So it felt 100% real. I was scared and didn't sleep. Number 44. When I was a little kid, probably around 5 to 8, me and my family were getting ready for a camping trip the next day. It was probably around 10 p.m. when we all finished but me, who, being a lazy little lad, stopped packing around 7. Those 3 hours I spent just sitting in my room, probably drawing or playing games. I didn't know everyone had finished packing, and I was thirsty, so I went downstairs to grab a drink. I was never really scared of the dark, so going downstairs at night didn't mess with me, and we lived in a pretty good neighborhood, so we left our front door open from time to time, with the screen door closed and locked to let the cool air in. So, around when I was going downstairs, about halfway down, I saw something coming from the front door. There was no noise or anything, but it had a glow. I assume it was probably my family coming back in with the flashlight, 'cause my dad is weird and loves them, but everyone was asleep. The glow was getting brighter until I could finally see what it was, and it scared me so much I couldn't move at all. It looked like a person, except there were no features, and it was somewhat blurry, kind of like it was out of focus, and it was completely white, no clothes or anything. It kept walking, but in a really slow way, until it hit the base of the stairs and just stopped. Like stopped halfway into a step with one leg off the floor and everything. Neither of us moved at all for like 5 minutes, until it turned its head toward me. I couldn't tell, but it felt like it was looking at me. Once that happened, I noped. And luckily, my parents' bedroom was right next to the stairs, so I sprinted up the stairs and woke my mom up so fast that Usain Bolt would be surprised. Mom came out quickly with a hammer and asked what was wrong. I told her there was someone in our house, but when my mom turned on the light, it was gone. Number 45. I was about 9 years old, and fast asleep in bed. I wasn't dreaming about anything, but I was suddenly jolted awake as if I'd had a nightmare. I rolled over and stared into the dark abyss of my room. I was short-sighted so much that the darkness was also clouded over with blurriness. I began to settle back in and go to sleep. I suddenly sensed movement, like the air in my room was being disturbed. I barely make out the shadowy outlines of figures moving from my bedroom door over to my bed. Several tall figures collectively line up and loom over my bed. I can't make out a single detail, aside from the general outline. Most wore hoods, another wore some sort of suit, and the most centered one had an extremely wide-brimmed hat. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move. I tried to shout, but I can't speak. They just keep staring at me. My fear reaches a breaking point. My mind starts to go blank. Everything goes white. I wake up in my parents' bed. I jolt up and begin to panic and hyperventilate. My mother asks me if I'm okay. When did I end up here? Supposedly, I had sprinted from my room at full speed to their room, turned on every single light I encountered along the way, including the one in their room, taking into account this was 3 a.m., so I spooked them. I immediately ducked and hid under the blankets and told them, I'm just going to sleep. I have absolutely no recollection of these events, only what happened before. I thought about it for years, and it couldn't have been sleep paralysis, because I practically just rolled over seconds before the figures entered my room. Never once have I been noted for sleepwalking, but my parents say my eyes were closed when I came in. Number 46. I'm in a hotel near the sea, and it's night. The door suddenly opens slightly. At first I think that it just opened on its own. That happens sometimes. By the way, I can't see anything outside as it's very dark and my eyes haven't adjusted. But when I get up, the door shuts violently. At first I think that it was the wind, but there certainly wasn't any wind. Then I think there was someone outside who just saw it open and then closed it, but then I remember that the lights outside are motion sensitive and are activated from the slightest movements. They are also on the entire night. Number 47. So I was hiking the Pacific Coast Trail last week, and, well, I'm just gonna say it. As I cut across one of the other trails from the Pacific Coast Trail, a couple of Forest Service guys hike up from the east. One is clearly a LEO in a full kit with an AR-10. The other guy is an LEO, but he's got a rucksack covered in smoke canisters and carrying a huge saw with teeth an inch deep. They ask me how I am, and if I'd seen anything odd around. I say that I'm hiking the trail, nothing weird to note, and I ask what's up. They say something about a problem bear near one of the upper lakes, and that they're chasing off with pepper grenades, and to watch out since I'm alone. I shrug and thank them for the info and keep hiking. I set up camp a mile or so down the trail. A bit after dark, I hear gunshots to my west. All night, every couple of hours, I hear gunshots, slowly circling along the west to the south. I don't get any sleep. A bit before dawn, I hear another volley of shots, and a horrendous noise to the east. Sounds like a great pig getting struck and bleeding out slowly. The noise stops a bit after dawn. I climb out of my tent and start packing. I start hiking south, and I can smell a very bad smoke smell, half-rotted meat, and copper blowing from the south. The two Forest Service guys wander up from the east. Leo's pack is significantly lighter. The guy with the saw has one smoke grenade left, and he is covered in some kind of black stuff, especially his saw. I asked what the hell was going on. The guy with the saw just gives me a grin and says, "A bear." Leo nods in affirmation and adds, "It was just a bear. Don't worry about it. It's gone." They don't even care about the smell or the black stuff all over him and on the saw that looks like it's smoldering. They ask if I need anything and wish me luck on my hike. I can't get any good sleep for the rest of my trip. I get home last night and realize my camera is gone. Number 48. I was driving home from a late shift at work. The moon is out, but it's still a very dark night. I live roughly 30 miles out of town with my cousin. I'm driving along the interstate for some of the trip. I take my turn and start the last part of my drive. 12 miles of dirt road that leads back into the woods. I only have 2 neighbors who live next to the road where I am on. No one else for 12 miles. I'm about halfway home when I come around a bend, going maybe 35, and I see some bright object crossing the road. I swerve just enough to avoid hitting it. I have no idea what it was. Very small. I replay making that turn and seeing the object a couple of times in my head. I get curious and turn around. I come around the corner and see the object resting on the opposite side of the road, totally still. It's a toy. I get out and approach the toy. The forest is totally dark and totally quiet. We're still about 5 miles from home, 7 miles from the main road and the nearest neighbor. It's a plastic toy train, just the engine portion of a train. I play with the wheels and wonder how it got out here. I turn the toy over and see a dial. I give it a twist. It's a wind-up toy. Remembered that this was rolling across the street. I drop the toy and start walking backwards to my car, too scared to turn around. My back bumps into the door. The door rocks, bumps into something, then settles. Before I can turn around to investigate, I hear something yell off down the road, and then plod away. I never saw that toy again. Number 49. I'm a camp counselor. I'm in the woods with admittedly bratty kids who have never been out in the woods before. By myself because the summer is pretty much over and most of the male staff have gone back to school. We're on around 500 acres of private property in western Wisconsin. Some spooky stuff happened a couple weeks ago. Most of the male staff hunt, and one of the female staff from California claimed to have seen a crowd-loaded deer entrails, hearts, and no carcasses or blood at one of the old campsites. The boss confirmed that this happened. IWTF. Nothing in this part of the Midwest does anything that cleanly near this many loud people. I disregard it. I'm getting paid. I try to sleep that night, but I can't because camp policies had the rain fly on the tent at all times and it's like a 95-degree night. At about 2:30 a.m., I hear someone running through our campsite. At first I thought it was one of my friends who likes to prank people. The footsteps sound like something that weighs 250 pounds. No breathing though, no sticks breaking, nothing. It has to be bipedal. Not a bear because the bears are loud, and the food was in a bear bag about 25 yards away. Oh no. I feel the urge to pee. This of all times. I grab my little knife and stare at the tent fly and pray to the cube that I can suppress my urge to pee. I can feel something watching. I try to be as silent as possible. I continue watching with the fly, waiting for that eerie feeling to fade. 5 a.m.-ish, the feeling goes away. I urinate and fall back asleep. I wake up at 7 a.m. I don't mention anything to the kids, as you do not want panic kids. I get back to the camp and find one of my redneck buddies who I was out with that night. I ask him if anything weird happened. He was about 3 clicks down a ravine and on a sandy beach. He heard the same running. His timing coincided with mine, All of his issues happened around 12:45 to 1:50. He also heard a small girl scream for help from the deepest part of the forest. All the girls are back at camp. We both know there weren't any girls around. His kids all heard the screaming. Sometimes the voice would shift into that of an old man. Uh-oh. We both know this is old native land. Double uh-oh. We asked the older counselors if they have ever had anything weird happen to them in the woods. Most of them say yes, especially from the hunters in the group. We bring this to our boss, an outdoor education guy. They're both like, well, we have wolves and bears around here. We aren't buying it. We convince them to put up trail cams. We put the cams up ourselves near the deer trails. We come back to the cameras and they're missing. A group of us want to go hunting for this thing. The boss is never going to let that happen. Well, darn it. I guess I need to figure out some sort of personal protection stuff for next year. And last but not least, number 50. I was 15 years old, visiting my uncle in the Highlands. My uncle used to manage some woodland for a rich guy in Scotland. Decent money, lovely scenery, and a free house. I'd always help him out, so I've been shooting for a while. He tells me there's been some attacks on the deer on the land. One of the stags has gone missing and the deer are freaked out. Usually it's a poacher. He hands me one of my old rifles and tells me to go practice, as we'll be out tonight. That night, there's barely any moon, so we're gonna have to use dogs to sniff out anything. After a few hours, we get bored and we rest up. We're having a cup when you hear it. The blood-curdling sound of a deer being killed. Gotcha. The dogs go nuts when they hear it. And give chase. We follow. We're gonna catch this guy in the act. Quick march about 10 minutes when we find it. The deer is in pieces. These aren't any poachers. Dogs are going nuts, but it's too dark even with the lamps to see anything. We hightail back to his house. The next day, we head back to the site. The carcass has been moved, but you can still tell that it's been mauled. We show the landowner. He goes white. We never speak of it again. The landowner made us never speak of what happened. Obviously I can post on here because I'm anonymous and all that. I legitimately, though, never went back to my uncle's place and he quit not long too after. Apparently no one ever spoke what happened, but my uncle said a few years later he heard some local farmers complaining of missing animals from a farm close to the old land. I'm normally pretty skeptical of the whole spooky innawoods stuff, but that's my closest experience. Hey guys, this is Truth is Scarier Than Fiction. Thank you for 100 subscribers. In fact, at the time that I'm recording this, I think we're at 190 plus. It's really been a journey. We're almost at a year and we're already over 100 subscribers strong. As you guys requested, I put out a extra long True Scary Stories video, which is unlike anything I've ever done before. I put hours into this, so if you could give it a like or a comment, I'd appreciate that. And for the video, I tried to put in a little bit of everything. Occult, paranormal, skinwalker, and the usual more believable stuff, because I know you guys like that. Thanks again guys, and remember, fear keeps us going.